Hello everybody and welcome back to my card game tutorial series. In this video we are going to be working on evolving Pokemon and selecting cards from the card piles we created in the last video. If you enjoy this series, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to download these files or get one-on-one help, be sure to check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. So let's begin. So the first thing we want to do is go to our card object. We want to alter our condition we have for setting a Pokemon card down on the field. Right now our condition says if we are dropping a Pokemon card and that field slot is empty, we are good to drop that card. But now we only want to be able to drop basic cards or stage 1 cards. So we're going to add a script to this condition so that it only allows us to drop stage 0 Pokemon cards. Let's create that script. So we're going to pass one variable to this script and we're going to call it card number. And if the number value in the nums array that corresponds to that card number, if that value is equal to 0, and it is a Pokemon card, return 1. And if it is not, return 0. So if we did that correctly, this script call will turn orange, and now let's test it. So now we should not be able to drop the Blastoise card on the field, but we should be able to drop the Squirtle card. Now what we want to do is create a condition in our left released event to allow us to drop the next stage Pokemon on top of a basic Pokemon. Now the way I decided to do this is to create an array similar to the array we created for our sprite array. And we're going to create that array in a script called init evolution array. This is going to be a very long script that I'm going to leave in a comment below. So if you need that, be sure to check out the comment section below. Now what this is doing is creating this evolution array, and each position of that array corresponds with the Pokemon card number. And the value at that position is equal to the card number of the card it evolves from. So since Alakazam is the first card in the series, the value in the first position should equal 32, which is Kadabra. So now we want to initialize this array in our object card create event. So we will do that here. And now we want to create a condition in our left released event similar to the one for our basic Pokemon and our energy cards. So let's change this condition to an else if statement and create another else if statement. And this condition is going to say if the card is a Pokemon card, and the field position we are hovering over does not equal -1, we want to set this card but only if the field value at that position does not equal 0 and the evolution number that corresponds to that card number is equal to the field value at that position. Then we are good to drop the card. But let's create this field position variable. We're going to set that equal to the field position function call. So if we've done that correctly, all of the field position variables should turn yellow. And it looks like we forgot a bracket here. So now what we want to be in this condition is everything we will do to alter that card. So let's create another local variable and call it card number. And we're going to set that equal to the card number of the card object. We're doing that so we can pass it to the object we are changing, which is the player field card at the field position. So with that object, we are now going to change the sprite index to equal the sprite in the sprite array that corresponds to that card number. Then we want to move all of the cards in the pile that we created in the last video back one position. And we'll do that by setting all of the values at pile I to equal the value at pile I minus 1. And then what we want to do is set the first value in that pile array equal to the card number of the field card. Then we want to increment the pile counter since we are adding that card to the pile. Now what we want to do is change the number of damage counters this card has. So we want the number of damage counters to account for all of the damage counters the current Pokemon has lost. And we'll do that with this equation. Script call get HP. And when we created this script call, we did not have it take in a value, but we're going to alter that script so that it will, so that we can use it in the way we need to. And then we're going to divide that value by 10. So that will be the number of damage counters the new card has. And then we're going to add that to the difference between the current number of damage counters and the number of damage counters the card on the field typically has. And we're going to divide that value by 10. And then we're going to pass that self card number. So let's change this script now. All we need to do is pass it a variable, which we're going to call cardNum, and we're going to set that equal to argument 0. And then we're going to want to go back into our initial call of it and add the card number within those parentheses. So now that we've done that, we want to change the card number of the field object to the new card number. And we want to change the field value at this position to equal the new card number. So since we've done that, now we want to remove the card from our hand and destroy the hand card we are dropping. So that's all we will need to do to evolve our Pokemon cards. Before we test it, let's alter our deck so that we can start with the desired cards we want. So what I want to do is start with the Squirtle evolution line and the Poliwag evolution line in order to test this. So I'm going to take this Wartortle card, which is 42. I'm going to remove it from my deck initialization and add it under the hand comment. And then I'm going to go back up and I'm going to take a Poliwrath card, remove it from the deck initialization, paste it above a Poliwrath card or a Poliwhirl card. Then I'm going to copy those and remove them, and then do the same for a Poliwag card. And that's so I have all of the cards in a row and I didn't have to go back and forth to get them. And then I'm also going to paste that underneath the hand comment. So now I'm going to move the hand comment to have only 5 cards underneath it. So these are the cards that we will start with in our hand, and then the next card should be the Poliwrath, and then we'll get all of our energy. So now that we have that, let's test it. So now that we have that, let's try this out. So I'm going to try to drop my stage 1 and 2 Pokemon cards and see that I am not allowed to. And then I'm going to drop my basic Pokemon. And I'm going to try to evolve Squirtle into Poliwhirl. And you see it doesn't allow me. And then I'm going to try to evolve Poliwag into Poliwrath. And it doesn't allow me. So let's see if we can evolve Poliwag into Poliwhirl, which it allows me. And we can see that the number of damage counters has changed. And we've added Poliwag to our pile. So now let's see if I can evolve Squirtle, which I can, and the damage counters updated. And then I'm going to evolve them all the way through. So we see that that works, but now let's see what happens if we try to do that with existing energy cards on the Pokemon, and see if our pile puts the evolution lines directly behind the Pokemon cards in the preview. So, as you can see, even though we've added the energy cards first, Poliwhirl and Poliwag are still above them. And same with the Wartortle card. But what I want to do here is I would like to show the evolution line cards on the field once I evolve them, similar to how it looks in the preview, except it will just ignore the energy cards. So let's go to our field card object, uncomment the code that we used to draw the cards in the previous video, and in the condition we're going to change it to, if it's a Pokemon, draw the card. Now let's see what it looks like. So now if I drop Poliwhirl on Poliwag, we can see that the Poliwag remains on the field. And same if I drop Poliwhirl, you can see that the Poliwhirl and Poliwag cards are still being drawn onto the field. But now, what if we wanted to sift through this pile so we can read all of the cards? Or if you're creating your own game, if you would like to select one of these cards in order to remove it or whatever you would like for your game. In order to do that, we want to change how our field card is selected. So we don't want to deselect the card if we release the left button. This will only work if the left button is released within the card sprite, so we don't want that. And then we also don't want it to deselect if our mouse leaves the card sprite. So that leaves us with, in our step event, if our mouse left button is released, this will be the only way to deselect the card. So if you don't have this in your code, be sure you have it. The next thing we want to do is create a temp variable. This variable will be what holds the pile position we've selected. Another thing we want to do is add two macros. This will be the big card width and the big card height macros, and we want them set to 232 and 320. So be sure that you have that. So what we want to do now is to be able to view the card that we are selecting. And the code to be able to do that will be added in our draw event. If the card is selected, we would like to be able to view what card the mouse is hovering over so that we can read it. So we're going to create a script that will determine what card we are hovering over. And we're going to call that script pile select. The following code will determine what card we are hovering over. So what these conditions are doing is, if the mouse is not hovering over any of the cards in the X direction, set the temp value equal to -1. And if the mouse button isn't over any of the cards in the Y direction, set the temp value equal to -1. These two over here is checking to see if the mouse is in between the middle 20 pixels of the cards, and if it is, set the temp value equal to I. So what I mean by that is there's going to be an imaginary rectangle over each of the cards that if the mouse button is in between the 20 pixels and the center of the card going from the top of the card all the way to the bottom, then that's the card we are selecting. So now that we have that card selected, let's draw the card. And the way we're going to do that is if temp is greater than -1, which means we have selected a card, we are going to draw the sprite at its position. We have already drawn it, except it's going to now be above all of the other cards. Now, all we have to do is change the I value to temp. Another thing we want to do before we test this is if the card is no longer being selected, set temp equal to -1. Now let's see if we've done that correctly. So now let's create a pile. We're going to have Blastoise here and Poliwhirl here. And we're going to put a few energy cards on both of these Pokemon. So if I have Blastoise selected, you can see I'm holding down the mouse button, and even though I'm not hovering over that card, it's still selected, and we know that because the pile is being drawn in the center of the field. Now if I hover over these cards, once I get into the middle 20 pixels of that card, it's now being selected. So since Wartortle is selected, it's now being drawn above all of the other cards. Same with the Squirtle card, the energy card, and then the last energy card. Now, if you want to use this method to select one of these cards, all you have to do is utilize that temp value. Let's change one of these cards to be something different. Let's just say we will change it to be a Charizard. So what we're going to do is in our step event, in the if our mouse button has been released, which means we are deselecting the card, if we have a card selected using the temp variable, we are going to change that card to equal Charizard. Now if you wanted to remove it, you would insert code here to remove it from the pile and set it to the graveyard or discard pile. So let's see what happens now if we do that. So let's take Poliwag. Oops. We have an error, and it says that our pile card is out of range. And that's because our temp starts at -1. And we only want to do this if temp is greater than -1. Because if it's not, the value in this pile brackets will be a negative number, and you can't have that. So let's stack Poliwag with a bunch of energy cards. Let's evolve him and see what happens when we select one of these cards. So if I select a card out here and I let go, nothing happens. But if I deselect the card while I'm hovering over one of these cards in the pile, it will change it to Charizard. And since Charizard is a Pokemon, it will print that card. And if I go back here, Charizard is in fact there. And then I can change Poliwag to Charizard. So this is just a small example of how you can alter these cards now using the code we created in this video. That is all I wanted to go over in this video. In the next video, we're going to be working on discarding cards into the graveyard. This was recommended by one of my viewers. So if there's something you want to be covered in a future video, be sure to leave that in the comments below. But what we're going to do is we're going to start creating code to use some of our trainer cards. For instance, if we use Bill, it allows us to draw 2 cards. Bill is sent to the graveyard, and we draw 2 cards. And then we have Professor Oak. Professor Oak allows you to discard your hand, then draw 7 cards. So if I use this card, we will see all of my cards being sent to the graveyard and the graveyard pile increasing. So if you're interested in that, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave a comment. And if you would like to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to hit that like button. Again, if you would like to download these files or have any one-on-one help, be sure to check out my Patreon. That's linked in the description below. Until next time.